The U.S. has a debt problem and a spending problem. Let's talk about it. $33 trillion, that is the debt. So let's talk about how did we get here? Well, first of all, post-pandemic, it took 2 years to add $10 trillion. That's a lot. The previous decade is what it took to add 10 trillion. So clearly, we're growing at a pace that's quite uncontrollable. As a matter of fact, just this week, in one day, our debt grew 275 billion in one day. If you annualize that, that is 1 trillion in a year. The debt is growing right now, probably sustainable at about 18% a year. Now think about that for one moment. If that was your debt, that was my debt, at what point am I bankrupt? At what point am I insolvent? Of course, that's going to be quickly. Now, U.S. government works in different ways, and I'm not here to speak about that, but I can tell you this, we have a major debt problem. So I'm going to talk about some of the things and concerns that I have. So the first issue is debt rising at this pace, the interest payments on the debt. Okay, so think about that for a minute. If we have debt, we all pay interest. The interest payments on our debt is the number one most expensive item as of now in our entire budget. It used to be the defense spending. Well, that is getting dwarfed now, and the debt interest is going to continue to grow, again, at a pace of 18% a year. So let's talk about another issue. We have maturing debt. What that means is we have financed debt that's going to mature. For instance, next year, we have about $7.6 trillion in debt that will mature. That's got to be reissued on top of the other expenditures which are growing each year. Probably call that another 2.2 trillion. So next year we got another $9 trillion that we have to basically finance, which means we have to issue debt at much higher rates. So that interest expense that I quoted earlier is going to continue to compound much higher because going forward, each year we have more debt that will be maturing at much higher rates. So that's going to continue to be a long-term issue that's going to cause a lot of issues. Now let's talk about the buyers of our debt. So many have heard about China. That's the number one buyer of the U.S. debt. Now China's got its own problems. Their economies are declining. They have a lot of issues. As a matter of fact, they have basically cut in half about $500 billion less purchases of our debt. So we can't depend on China to be the buyers of our debt. So who's the second largest buyer? That's been U.S. pension funds. Well, there's been no new U.S. pension funds. As a matter of fact, U.S. pensions, most pensioners are retired. So they're taking their money out. So they're forced sellers of our debt. And the number three is the U.S. petrodollar relationship that we have, and that has been on a decline as well. So bottom line is the three biggest buyers of U.S. debt is on a significant decline. Where are the next buyers going to come from? So let's wrap this up. What can you do? Well, the number one thing you should do is have a financial plan that helps you make the investment-based decisions. That is the number one thing you can do. Of those investments, diversification is the number one thing you can have against uncertainty, which arguably we have lots of uncertainty that lies ahead of us. One last thing, there's a lot of noise out there. And I mean in financial markets, in the media, the online, everything, everywhere I've seen, the doomsayers are out there selling you newsletters. The gold bugs, while I believe in gold, but that's a small portion of your portfolio, they're out there in full force. A lot of people are out there trying to make you scared. This is why I tell you back to diversification is the number one and the only way to get through this. I'm Mike Smith, and this was The Lowdown.